Hey everybody, happy Sunday. If it's Sunday in your part of the world, sometimes I'm talking to people who are in Australia. They're a day ahead, like my pal Doug Hewson. I was working on a video that went into how to really get into Fusion and use the nodes to use things like text to create really great animated custom text. And as I'm working on the video, I decided, why don't I do this live? Because a lot of times you guys have questions, people out there have questions, and I answer them in the comments section, but sometimes real time while I'm doing things, it's easier to show you, the things that I'm doing. If some part of it becomes questionable or problematic, sometimes it's harder to do that in comments section. So today what I'm doing is really diving into the Fusion page and trying to do it in a way that makes a lot of sense for anyone out there who's ever clicked over to the Fusion page, stared at it and went, nope. which I gotta be honest, has been me in a lot of occasions. I feel like I feel a lot of times I look at that thing and it's like, man, that looks so confusing. This is not a premiere. This is an actual live, my friend. So you get to go on screen and I get to put your comment up there. Yeah. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask, but I'm going to try to really stay on topic, which is, trying to make sure this is focused on people who have been looking at the Fusion page and, really been confused and just want to get started because everything just seems heavy duty. I like watching a lot of Fusion tutorials because I'm still in the process of learning myself. We're always learning. And some of my friends like Jamie Fenn, I don't know if you know Jamie, or Mr. Alex Tech, they have some great tutorials out there. Jamie in specific likes to dive right into Fusion and he'll just start showing you what you need to do. And if you're not familiar with the node system, it can be complicated because it moves fast. Like some of these guys are teaching at an advanced level. And I always try to aim my content towards the entry level, just get you in there, get you understanding so that you can watch some of these advanced tutorials and they'll make sense. And you'll go, oh, I get that. I know what that is. So I'm not gonna waste a lot of time here today. We're gonna move right into things. This is DaVinci Resolve. This is a clean project. I don't have anything in it right now. I've just opened it up as a new project. So what we're going to be doing today is I want to show you how to create some text. And I want to be able to show you how to animate it and do things with it in Fusion that maybe you can't do in things like the edit page, and be able to not only create these kind of moving animated text like lower thirds or on-screen graphics, but be able to save them so that you can use them in a future project. So you can actually start building out your own catalog of different types of text that you've custom made that look different than everybody else's. So when you're here in a new project and you want to build what we call like a Fusion clip, right? You want to make something that you're going to use in Fusion, but we don't even have a timeline yet. This is one of the things that, I found that a lot of people don't quickly explain, and you have to kind of learn the hard way. When you open a project, you don't have a timeline to begin with. This thing down below here, right? This is your timeline in a sense, but there's no tracks in it yet. There's no video track, there's no audio track. It's just sort of a blank slate, and there's Resolve sitting there waiting to tell you, or waiting for you to tell it more appropriately, what are we doing here? So when you first start out and you want to create something in Fusion and you don't have anything in your project, the best way to do that, there's actually two ways. If you look down in your lower left, down here, this is your toolbox. If you click on that effects right here, that effects tab, it'll open up the ability for you to find a Fusion composition. You can see it right there at the top. It's sort of permanently fixed there under effects, adjustment clip, and then Fusion composition. If you just grab that Fusion composition by left clicking and holding and dragging it over, put it into your timeline, and now we actually have a timeline, right? Now we have a video clip, and we have, a video track and an audio track, and in the video track, we have that blank Fusion composition. We haven't built anything yet. We've just telling DaVinci Resolve, hey, we're gonna build something in Fusion today, and I need to create a timeline so I can get started. And if you look in the upper left, you'll see there's now a timeline, right? It says timeline 1. So that's all we're doing is just going, okay, I need to get started. I need to work in Fusion, and to do something in Fusion, I have to start the process. Now, it was funny. Someone asked me the other day who was using DaVinci Resolve on an iPad, what some of the differences were. And one of the differences is I don't believe they don't activate Fusion. I don't want to get too deep into it. You can actually unlock it and stuff. But another way to create a Fusion composition is to go into that upper left media pool where we are up here where it says timeline. You can right click up there and you can choose new Fusion composition. By choosing that, it'll create a Fusion composition. It'll ask you for, like to name it and things like that. But if you just hit create, it'll put a new Fusion composition up in that media pool where we usually have things like our video clips, our audio, maybe some images you might use. And then you can also drag that down into your timeline. It accomplishes the same thing. It's just taking a blank Fusion clip, putting it into our timeline, and getting ready to work in Fusion, okay? So whatever you choose doesn't really matter. Here we have it. What you want to do is select that Fusion clip in your timeline, right click on it, and if you look, you'll see it says, let me make sure I can see it. You'll see it says Open in Fusion page. So what you want to do is click on that Open in Fusion page, and it'll now bring you over to the notoriously scary, always formidable Fusion page. Simple as that. That's where we're at. Now we've just got ourselves into the Fusion page. Is everybody with me so far? Give me a thumbs up if everything makes sense. If something in there you went like, if you're working along at home and you went, it didn't work for me, I have problems, feel free to shout anything out, questions along the way for what we're doing. My goal here today is I want every one of you to walk away and say, oh my gosh, I can do Fusion. I understand Fusion now. Perfect. Thumbs up, nice and simple. Great. Cool. So now we're here in the Fusion page. And if you look, there is this one node here that just says media out. And I've talked about this in a previous video that I made when people ask me like, I don't really understand what this whole nodes thing is. It doesn't make sense to me. It's confusing. The way I was able to make sense in my brain is I'm a guitar player. And even if you're not a guitar player, this might make sense to you. If you have an electric guitar, I've got a few of them hanging behind me. If I just grab it and start playing it, an electric guitar needs to be amplified. It needs, so you can hear the thing. You need to actually get an amplifier and then get a guitar cable and plug it from your guitar into your amplifier, turn the amplifier on, you can hear it, right? That's not too dissimilar from how the nodes work in Fusion. And let me show you why I say that. If I go over here, let me go just full screen here so you can see this as best as possible. Think of that media out as your amplifier, right? It's just a guitar amplifier. That's the output. That's what's going to take whatever's plugged into it and send it out to the world. But nothing right now is plugged into it. I don't have anything plugged in. It's just like an amplifier that's waiting for a guitar to be plugged into it. So when we're building out, today we're going to be working with text. The very first thing you want to start thinking about is, well, if I'm going to build out text, I do know how to use a photo editor. If you've ever used Photoshop or even Microsoft Paint, when you open up one of those programs, it starts with a blank background, and then you start adding things on top of it, like some text, or you might scribble, or you might add some images. For any of you YouTubers who have built thumbnails, you understand building layers, starting with a picture and then maybe adding some text on top, and you create these layers that build upwards. Well, Fusion is a bit like that as well, but it prefers you to work left to right instead of sort of up and down. In a photo editing software, your layers would stack on top of each other, sort of from the bottom up. The nodes kind of do the same thing. They just go left to right. So in this situation, we're working with text. One of the very first things we need to do is to grab a background. So let's go up here. And if you look right here, this middle band of icons, let me see if I can circle them for you. See all this stuff right in the middle? These are all nodes that are more frequently used, and YouTube and DaVinci Resolve, you can see I'm a YouTuber, and DaVinci Resolve puts them there. The ones that are sort of more common that you'll use frequently, puts them right there so you can readily access them. And just drag them down into your node area. So the first thing we want to do is to bring in a background, right? We got to start with a background. Right now we got nothing, and we're going to create a text animation. So we need the background to build on top of. So to do that, you're going to look right at that first one right here. That's your background node. And if you're ever wondering if you hover on them, they'll actually tell you what they are. So like a text pops up. Of course, it's not popping up for me right now. But if you drag that down, that's your background. It even says background right there. Okay. Now, if you're looking at this really quickly, when you pull a node out, see that little square? You're going to see a lot of things like triangles attached to it. Sometimes there's different color triangles or arrows, whatever you'd like to call them. And then there's always one square. The square is your output. So what we want to do is if that was our guitar and this was our amplifier, we need to left click on the output and connect a cable so that our guitar plugs into our amplifier. And if you look up in the upper right in the preview window, you'll notice that all of a sudden it turned black. Let me undo that, right? See how that's black up there? Let me undo what I just did. If I disconnect this, do you see, I've got a dual screen going on. Let me go to a single screen. It makes it a little easier. But if right now there's nothing up here because I haven't connected anything. And the minute I left click on the output of the background and go, okay, I want that to show, I need to connect it to the output so it can be seen, boom. All of a sudden you see, oh, there we go. There's that black background. And black just happens to be the default color right up here for the background. If you look, it's not, you could change the color. You could change it to red or anything you wanted to do, but it's just a background right now. And we're going to build off that to start. So now we just basically have an open template, background plugged into the output, guitar, chord, amplifier, background, connection, media output. All good? Does this make sense? Thumbs up if this makes sense so far. All we're doing is we put in a background, we connected it to the output, and now we've got a black background that's just sitting there. If that all makes sense, cool, we can keep moving forward. If you have any questions along the way, Megan is in the chat, and if something I said doesn't make sense, don't be afraid to ask a question if you need to ask a question to make it. I'm more than happy to come over and explain it a little better. Smart Sky, nice to SMA Sky, nice to see you too. Bet I'll get to that. There it is, nice to see you. It's very good to see you too, my friend. Thumbs up, thumbs up. We're seeing a lot of thumbs up. Everyone seems to go, yep, simple part, I get it. We saw what you did there, Daniel, that the background is a node, the output is a node, and you just connected the background to the output. And if I went back right now to the edit page, you would now see this Fustion composition is just a black screen. To be fair, when there's nothing in DaVinci Resolve, it's also a black screen. So it's hard to distinguish, but the default color when there's no background, transparency, is also black. But all that is right now is a clip that says black background. So let's go back over to the Fustion page over here. And now what we want to do is we want to create some moving text. So to create moving text, the very first thing we have to add is text. Now I want you to think about Fustion as layers, as layering things in, or as another way I like to think about it, like if you're a guitar player, if you've ever seen a guitar player plug into an amp, we have these cool things called effects pedals. You can buy like a distortion or a wah-wah pedal. You've probably heard Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan use one of those. Or sometimes there's flangers and different effects that you can plug in to get a different sound out of your guitar. And the way you do that is you take your guitar and take the plug out of the amplifier, you plug it into the pedal first, and then plug out of the effects pedal into the amp. So you end up going guitar effects pedal connected to the amp, and that allows you to change the sound because you've added something in between the signal chain of the electric guitar to the amplifier. That was one of the things that really made sense for me here when I started using Fustion, because it's very similar. I want to add a text node in here. I want to add a layer of text in between the background that I have here and to the output. So to do that, there's a couple ways to do it. Now you could just select the background layer. If I click on it, you see how it's now highlighted in that sort of orange-red circle around it. So that is now selected the background layer. And if I wanted to add text, I could actually go up. There's a text node right there. Do you see it? It says text with a T. All I'd have to do is click on it. And because I have the background node selected, it added it in. Now, this probably looks really confusing. You're probably like, what the heck? You said you were adding text, Daniel. And all I'm seeing right now is like you got two different nodes got added in. It's all over the place. It's in weird spots. This was one of the things that actually confused me seeing some of this when I first started using it. I'm like, what the heck just happened there? But let me show you something. You can move this around and have it make a little more sense, all right? And the way to do that is I'm going to move the merge node over so it's a little bit more in a straight line, and I'm going to grab the text and I'm going to move it to the top. And what that does here is we now have a background. We've got a merge node. This is something that's really important. You might think to yourself, well, Daniel, why doesn't DaVinci Resolve just go background and then add a text layer, put the text node in, and then go to the media out, like just connect like the guitar pedal, text to the background to the text to the amplifier, then it would all be there. The problem is when you're dealing with video construction and layering, you need to be able to tell the software, well, which one goes in front, which one goes in back, and how do they connect? How do those two things interact? And especially with things like animated text, and when you get deeper into different nodes, you need to use a merge node, which basically says, okay, you have your background, and I want to merge or place into this fusion clip another element. And that merge node allows you to connect them together and allows DaVinci Resolve to understand which one should be in the foreground, which one should be in the background, and how they should connect. And another thing that no one really explained to me that took me a second to spot, let me switch over here. If you look at these, when you move these things around, can you see how it's connected right now? Right, so the background goes into that yellow arrow and the text goes into like I'm calling an arrow, a triangle. And then the text overlay is going into a green arrow. One of the things that happens is if you move those, you'd think those things were fixed. Like the green one's on top, the yellow one's on the left, right? Is that what it seems like? The yellow triangle goes here, the green one's on the top, and you're trying to learn, there's the output on the right, and there's a blue one that does something else here. There's all these different arrows that go in. The reality is the output is the square one. You'll always recognize the square is your output. But all the other ones kind of move. If I took the text and I moved it to the bottom, can you see what just happened? Now the green triangle or the arrow is on the bottom and the blue is on the top. So depending on how you move the pieces around, the inputs will switch around to whichever side the thing you're connecting in. In this case, I was adding text, and I moved it to the bottom, so it's underneath the merge node. So it moved that input node, that green, right there. But I can move it back to the top, and now the blue will be down there on the bottom, and the green will be at the top. But all I've done is background layer. We were going to the output, but we needed to add in some text, so we added a merge node, and we added text connected to that merge. And that is your simple layer. And because, if you look here, because this is on the left and the way this is laid out, that this input's here, this is going to overlay on top of the background. And you can even notice, let me see if it does it here. I'm hovering over the green arrow. Can you see what it says right there? Merge foreground. I'm literally, my mouse is on that little green triangle on top. And it's telling it merge, but I want the text to be in the foreground or in front of the background. If I did the same thing and hovered on the yellow arrow in the back there where the background's connected, you'll see it says merge background because it's telling this clip, which happens to also be named background, but it needs to be in the background of what we're merging in. So those arrows actually help define where something is connecting. It's telling those two, okay, you've got a background, you've got a text, they're merging together, but which one goes in the foreground, which one goes in the background before we send it out to the output, out to the amplifier, out to the project, which one goes where? How do they connect? How do they interact? Cool? Yes, thumbs up, yes, give me a high five. If all of that simple connection makes sense. Background to the output, we added in a text, so it's text, but we needed a merge layer to tell DaVinci Resolve how the background and the first layer of text is going to speak to each other, how they're going to connect and interact. Yes, I see thumbs up, awesome, I love it. So making sense so far, pretty simple. But as you can see in here, it can get confusing because you're like, man, like, what are all these weird, Daniel, it's all these like squares and nodes and what are they supposed to mean? But that's as simple as it is. And we can change the layout of these and move them closer together and put them in order that makes sense to our eyeballs. To me, it makes a ton of sense when I go, oh, okay, background, background here, text layer merged in, and then it goes to the output, right? That makes sense. Left to right, boom, my brain gets it. Now, when we start here and we want to start creating that text layer, the first thing we want to do is add some actual text. Even though we've added this text node right here, we haven't written any actual text. We haven't typed in any words yet. So the first thing we want to do is, let's add a word. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. I click on that text node. See how it's now highlighted in that red orange? And if I go up to the upper right inspector, right here, that's the inspector. You can see that I have it selected. It opens up this text node here where I can type some actual text in that will show up for that node, that text layer. So let me type the word, let's type animation. And as I type that word up in the upper right, you see that it appears on screen. And if you notice, it's got sort of a weird dashed green circle around it. And it also has like two red arrows, kind of an up and a left, and one to the right, and a dot in the middle. The reason you're seeing those is because I still have the text layer selected. If I took this text layer and I double left clicked on, or I single left clicked on it and deselected it, or actually, if I clicked in the gray area next to it, that will deselect anything. And now if I go up to the preview window, you no longer see the controls for it, right? Because I don't have it selected. So when you want to select a layer, just click on it down in the open node area, and then you will see you'll have the controls for that particular layer. And I could, if I wanted, grab that in the center, and I could actually move that around. I can say, I want that to be in different places. But for right now, I'm going to leave it. Excuse me. I don't need you right this second. I don't actually need that right now. So I'm going to leave it dead center. I want to use the other controls to make this happen. So with the text layer selected, I'm going to go over to right here in this text layer. And can you see right here, it says size. I'm going to leave the color as white. I'm going to leave this. I could change the font. I could make it bold. Those are all your basic controls for the layer. If I wanted to change the font and make it, bold or italic or not bold. But I'm just going to grab that size right here. I'm going to grab that size. And if you watch, I'm going to left click and hold that slider, move it to the right, and then the size of the word animation increases. So all I did, grabbed the text layer over here, right there, and then up in the inspector, I went over and I increased the size of it. I just grabbed that size and I went, let's make it a little bigger. So now it's just got the word animation sitting on screen over a black layer. Now in this particular animation we're doing, I want two words. You can have as many words as you want, but I want to create something that has two words that are interacting together. So let me add another text layer, right? I want to add another text layer on top of what I already have. I've got the background. I've got the word animation. Now I want to add another text layer. So to do that, what I would do is let's start with, I want it to be on top. You can put it anywhere, but I want it to be on top of this layer here, right? That text and that merge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep all of this in a line right now. I'm thinking this is my main line right here out to the output. I want to put that next layer in front of these other two. So I have background, then I'll have one layer of text, and then I'm going to add another layer of text, a different word that I can control separately. And I want to add it right here. So what I'll do is I'll select that merge node right there so that whatever I add will automatically be placed in front of it to the right. And then I'm going to go up and I'm going to click on that text node again. All right. And when I click on it, watch what happens. Mass confusion, right? Like, what is this? It's all in weird places, but reality is, no, it isn't. It's just, this is the way that DaVinci likes to default to putting things together. But it's the same thing. We had a merge node here. It added a merge node. It has a text layer here. It added another text layer. So all I like to do for my brain is I like to straighten these things out. And I like to go get that merge layer straightened out. Get that text layer put over here where my brain can understand it. And now when I look at it, I go, well, that makes more sense, right? This makes more sense. Background, first layer of text being merged into this, second layer of text being merged on top of that, and then everything goes out. And they're all connected with these little connector lines here, all my guitar cables, right? And we're just creating layers, nice and simple. Now that we have this second text layer, I can actually select that by clicking on it. See how it's now circled in red? That means I've selected the second text layer that I've added to this Fusion clip. And what I want to do is I want to put another word there. So with it selected, I go up to the upper right. Remember, it's the same thing. Now I have a text box for that second text layer that I've added. So let me add another word. I'm going to add the word technique. So we'll say animation technique, all right? And if you notice, it starts centered, right? It's actually right here stacked on top of the word animation. You can't even read it. They're just confusing. They're overlapping. Now I can't see anything. But I do have, because that text layer for the word technique is selected, I've got the circle and the controls with that center dot. So one thing I can do is actually click on that center dot and I can move it where I want, right? I can say, why don't I put that so it's just underneath and maybe it lines up with that, you know, the N in technique. How does that sound, right? So something like that. So there's my two layers and I just moved it over, just grabbed it in the left click and held that center dot with the two arrows and it let me push that over. So now I've got two words, animation technique. Let me click in the gray area. I turn off all the selections. This is what I have. Very simple, very easy. Two layers of text. One word is animation. Background, the word animation merged in, and then the word technique merged in. And if I went back to my edit page, where a lot of us are used to constructing our videos, you would see, there it is. That's it right there, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I see it. It just says animation technique, nice and simple. And it's not doing anything. We haven't added any animation, right? We haven't done anything to it. We just put it in there. And if we played this, it would just sit there, just kind of, all right. You told us in this Fusion clip that it has the word animation and the word technique. But it's, you notice one thing is cool is all of this is happening in a single Fusion clip right here. There's a background layer, there's two text layers, but in my project, I've got this one single Fusion composition. Instead of having all these different layers that you might build in the edit page, where you'd put a background, then add a text layer, and then have it do different things, this is all happening in this great singular Fusion composition that if I come back, and I'm going to show you how to save these, that if I came back to this Fusion composition later, I could change the text. I could use different words. So you can create these Fusion compositions that might be text overlays, and you can also make sure that when you save them in a different project, you might want this to say different words than animation technique. You can just open up that clip in Fusion and change the word. Go into select the text layer, put in a different word, and you can change the words and still use a lot of the same motions that are there. So let me get back into this and make sure this makes sense. Have I lost anybody yet? Is everybody understanding what's happening so far? If you do, give me another thumbs up. It's really important that I don't want to lose anybody along the way. Does this make sense to what we're seeing here? Right now, all I have is, whoop, I just lost my layer. Just move past it. Whoop, there it is. Hold on. Let me find my clips again. I'm just moving so fast. I'm just shooting a million miles an hour. So that's all we've got. A background layer, right? Background. We merged. We have one layer of text that we merged in, the word animation. Second layer of text we merged in, the word technique, and we sent them all out to the output. Cool. All thumbs up. I'm seeing all good thumbs up. I love that. I love it. So right now, I got thumbs up. I got thumbs up. I got 2 thumbs up. I've got 4 thumbs up. So simple, right? We didn't lose anybody yet. It's simple. We're in Fusion. We're using Fusion, but we're doing very simple things. This is where it starts to get really fun. This is where it can be. This is where you'll start to see where Fusion has much more advantages than just building stuff in the edit page, especially for more advanced kind of motion graphics and using text and using imagery and doing a lot with your video. So we're here in the Fusion tab. Let me get my hairy face out of here. Now we want to have things move. I have to ask a question first. Does everybody in here, thumbs up, thumbs down if you know what keyframing is, or if you've used keyframing and have a basic understanding of it. Thumbs up if you go, yeah, I understand the basics of keyframing. Thumbs down if you're like, no, I don't know that word, or I've tried to use it and it's confusing for me. Because what we're going to be doing now is some very basic keyframing, which is just telling the project what we want things on screen to do for motion, and we want it to do certain things at certain points in your timeline. All right, for the people here so far, I'm seeing, okay, absolutely. We're seeing, yep. Let me see. There's one thumbs down. Alfredo, I'll make sure I explain this. There's another thumbs up. Tricky Big 802 Outdoor Adventures says, yep, thumbs up. We've got a couple of thumbs down, Alfredo and Clayton's Wood Art. Cool. So let me make sure I explain this. If you're creating a project, and right now what we're doing is we've added 2 text layers, right? There's a black background, and there is the word animation and the word technique laid over it, right? Nice and simple. But they're not doing anything. They're just sitting in the middle of the screen. If I want them, what would be cool? Right? This will be, let's design a simple text animation that can be uniquely ours. Wouldn't it be cool if as this thing played, that maybe the word started off screen and shot into the middle? Like maybe the word animation was off on one side and the word technique was off on the other. And as you hit play, they zoomed into the middle and met and stayed right there. The way you create that motion or that animation is by using keyframes. And keyframes, in the simplest way that I can explain it, that I hope this makes sense, is, let's say you want the word animation to start off screen. You would move the word off screen and you would put a keyframe there, which is just like a little sticky note that tells DaVinci Resolve, hey, at this point, I want this word to be off screen. And then maybe a second later, you want it to zoom in and be in the middle of the screen. Well, what you do is you actually move a second farther in the timeline, put the word animation where you want it, maybe the center, and you add another sticky note that says, hey, Resolve. At this point, I want the word animation to be in the middle of the screen. But do me a favor. Can you put motion in between? Yeah, I wanted it to start off screen, and then I wanted it to be in the middle this far into the play. Once I hit play, a second in, I want it to be in the middle. Can you do all the animation for me? Can you make that happen? Can you make it zoom in? I'll tell you where I want it to start. I'll tell you where I want it to end. And can you fill all the blanks in? If you put keyframes, that's what those are, those sticky notes that says start here, and then another sticky note later on that says end here, your software will do all the stuff in the middle. The keyframes will animate that for you. So that's what we're doing when we're adding keyframes, is letting Resolve know, hey, start here, end here, and fill in the blank. Put the information in to make it move in between. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do using keyframes right now inside of Fusion, okay? So if I go back to this Fusion page, when I want something to move, this is tricky. We have a text, we have 2 text nodes and they merge in. But in Fusion, you're going to find there are a certain amount of controls if you just select the text node. If I were to select that and I go up over to the inspector on the right, you'll see there's things like, size, tracking, all these different options to work with it. And there are different layers too. There's like a layout, a transform, you can add shading, you can do all kinds of things with the text layer itself. But when it comes to really getting that layer to move or to animate, we want to add one more node in between. And it's like another set of controls, like a deeper level of controls. And what they call that is the transform node. It's yet another node that we got to stick into the signal chain and tell DaVinci Resolve, hey, I need to add another guitar effects pedal here. But this time I want it to come from the text node, okay? So what we're going to do is if you go, let me redo this real second. If I go over here, do you see this one right here? These are a whole layer of nodes right here that do different things. This one that's all the way to the right, let me see if I can get it to pop on me. And right there. No. If I grab it, left click, drag it down, and put it right in between these 2. Do you see as I drop it in line between the text one and the merge, do you see how that line went from being solid green? I'm kind of blocking it. Hold on a second. I'm ruining this for you. Let me get my hairy face out of the way. If I bring this down and I layer it right in between, do you see right there how the line went from one color green to blue and green? That's Resolve telling me, hey, you're ready to drop that node in and we'll connect it for you. So when we do that, we just want to bring down a transform node, drop it in there, and now you will see we've added that transform node and it's connected, right? It's connected from the text to the transform and then down to the merge. And if we select that transform node, right, you can see it's now selected. I left clicked on it. It's circled in red right there. Can you see it okay? I go up to the upper right, and now in the inspector, we have controls for that node, the transform node. And it gives us all kinds of things like the ability to move that around, that X and Y, pivot points, center points. Any of you who have worked with text on your edit page are probably familiar with the X and the Y. X is basically left and right. Y is up and down. So if we wanted to move things, that's where we would add that transform node and say, I'm going to give you some instructions here. Okay. Now listen, where I am right now, if you look, the playhead is set. I'm at the beginning of this clip back here, right? That's where I am. Actually, my playhead is way over here. That's the red one. So I'm going to grab that. You can do two things. You can either grab that playhead, left click on it and drag it backwards. If you see, I'm just dragging it by left clicking, or you can actually just hit the rewind button, which is this one here, get us back to the beginning of the clip. This one right there will put us all the way back. And now that red is all the way back at the beginning. That's your playhead. That's the playhead, okay? So we're at the very beginning of this clip. Now we have to decide, we want these to start off screen, shoot in, and meet in the middle. So they're in the middle now. Why don't we figure out where we think that should be? Now you can either hit the play button and then stop it quickly. You could go, okay, I'm gonna hit the play button and stop. And if you see, I just let it play until the playhead came out here. You could do it that way, just mentally to go, yeah, that's how long I want it to take to come into the middle. Or you can physically just, you can physically just grab the playhead and drag it out. You can actually left click on it and drag it out somewhere and maybe, use the markers here, drag it out to say the 10 mark, this sort of these areas. I don't think these are exact frames. It always never seems to quite line up, but the number 10 marker in the timeline. So let's start there. Let's say that's where we want these things are already in the center. That's where we want them to be in the center. But right now we need to tell Resolve at this point, I want this to look exactly as I'm seeing it right now. I want it to be dead center like this. I want this particular animation word and technique word to be exactly where they are on screen. So with the playhead right there on that marker, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the transform node of the first text, and then up in the upper right inspector, if you look, there's the center section right here. It's all of these. X is going to control your left and right. Y is going to control your up and down. And this is your keyframe marker, that little diamond right there. What we want to do is click that, and if you look now, it is red. If you see, it's now turned red. And if we come down here and we actually move the playhead a little bit out of the way, you can now see it's added a keyframe right there. With that node selected, there's a keyframe, which tells DaVinci Resolve at this point when you're playing, I want the word animation to be right where it is right now. Cool? Simple? Does that make sense? So what we want to do is now we want to start it off screen. We want to take the word animation and go, well, that's where I want it when it gets to that point, but I want it to start off screen. So the way to do that is we have to put the playhead where we want that animation to start, which here is, we have the playhead right here right now. We want it back here at the beginning. So when the thing starts, we want the animation, the word animation, to be off screen. So to do that, you can just left click and drag that playhead back to where you want it. That's all I'm doing right up here, is just grabbing it with my left clicking and holding and moving it. I'm going to move it all the way back to the beginning. And we've already added a keyframe to this transform node of the first word. So what I'm going to do is with transform still selected for this text layer, I'm going to go to the upper right inspector up here, and I'm going to grab that X, the left and right, and I'm going to push the word, let's go left. Let's go all the way off screen to the left. And if you see, I'm going to left click right where it, in that section, right where it says 0.5, that's the default start point. I'm going to left click and I'm going to drag to the left. And as I'm left clicking and I'm just moving my mouse to the left, see what's happening to the word animation? It's going left and right, staying perfectly horizontal. It's not going up or down. I'm only using X and I'm pushing it right off screen. I could have done this by clicking on that little, what we showed here. You know, there's this control area where you can move things, but that allows you to move it all over the place. I could have accidentally gone up a little. I wanted to zoom straight in. So using a transform node and just the X, which is left and right, it stays perfectly level, and I just shot it off screen. Kind of simple, right? Now watch what happens when I hit the play button, put the playhead all the way back to the beginning, and I hit play. Watch what the word animation does. comes in. Did everything we just talked about, right? It started off screen, and if I select the transform node, you'll actually see it move. It started off screen, I put one keyframe there, and when I got to this point, I had another keyframe telling it to be here, and Resolve filled in the blanks. Now, one thing I should say, I didn't make this clear. When I move that off screen, Resolve automatically added another keyframe because I had put the original keyframe telling it to be in the middle. If I had just moved it off of screen without having another keyframe point telling it to do something different later on, it would have just moved it off screen and left it off screen without adding any keyframes, because I haven't given it a point of reference. One of the things you really want to think about when you're using keyframes is you always got to set the points, because keyframes only work when you have at least 2 points. You have to tell it the difference between two things. Start here and here. If you just move a text off screen, it'll just stay off screen. If you move it back to the center, it'll just stay at center. You have to say, at this point, I want it to be off screen, and later on, I want it in the middle. And once you drop one single keyframe, any changes you make later on in the timeline, it'll keep adding keyframes based on the motion you've done. You don't have to go and click and add another keyframe there and then make the motion. You just move it, and when you stop it, it'll go, okay, at this point, apparently you want it moved to here, and it'll fill in the blanks. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if you're still with me for that simple off-screen to on-screen keyframing, left to right, left to center. I'm spitting. Left to center. If it makes sense, thumbs up. If it's confusing, I don't want to go any farther, and I want to make sure everyone's following along with this simple keyframing. Just left into the center. We got some thumbs up here. Tea time. Another thumbs up. Triple thumbs up. Pixel Peel with the thumbs up. Lots of thumbs up. So real simple, right? We didn't do anything special. Added a transform node to say we're going to move this text around. It's not going to just sit there. We had the background, the text. We merged it in, and we added a little effects pedal in there with a transform node and said, we're going to do some motion. We're going to do some motion in here. And that's all we're doing. We're using that transform node to tell that DaVinci Resolve we want the text to actually move, to animate. Okay? So now that we understand that, this is where it gets really cool. Well, why don't we also do the exact same thing to the other layer, to the second text layer right there? Let's grab, remember right here is that transform node right there. Let's left click drag and bring down a transform node that we can put on the second layer of text. Do you see? So now we have this one. This is just more controls for these text layers. All right. Each one nice and simple. There was our background. We added a text layer and merged it in, but then we added a transform node between the text and the merge to have more control of the text layer. We added a second text layer in. It was merged in with another node in front of this singular text layer, which was also in front of the background. And now we have a transform node to help us control the second word, technique. This is where it can get confusing, because if you just saw all these nodes, you'd be like, what on earth is going on in Fusion? But when you understand that these are layers and things are moving from left to right, and that the merge nodes are just adding these things in layers in front of whatever's on the left. Right now, we went from background to this text layer on top to another text layer on top, and we moved it out to the output so it's back into the project. And the transform nodes are just giving us more control to make some animation. Now, if we did the exact same thing, here's where you can start. It can get a little confusing here, but I'm going to try to keep it simple. All right. I want this layer of text, the word technique. You know what? Let me simplify this. Let me show you something you can do. One of the things I do find confusing is when you start seeing text 1, text 2, background. It's like if you had 8 layers of text, this would get pretty darn confusing. I wouldn't know what was going on. Watch what we can do here. We can actually right-click on that first text layer, on the text node, right? I'm going to right-click, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename. It's killing the window. I can't zoom that in, unfortunately. When I zoom it, it cuts it out. But what I'm going to do is right-click on the text layer, and I'm going to choose, let me see if it'll let me do it here. Nope. I'm going to choose the option for rename. And when I rename it, I'm going to name it. You see there's a window that pops up in the middle here that allows me to rename this node. Right now it's called text 1. Why don't we change it to the actual word on screen? Let's call it animation because that's the word it is. I hit and I write animation, I hit OK. And if you look, now that node says animation, I know what the text layer is. I know what it is. I don't have to guess which one was text 1, which one was text 2. I'm getting confused, especially if you have more layers you keep adding on something a little more elaborate. And let's do the same thing to this layer too. On text layer number 2, let's select that so it's surrounded in red, right? Right click on it and let's rename it. Right now it's called text 2. Let's change that. Let's change that to the word. We'll change it to the word technique, right? Because that's what the other word is technique. And that'll help us, if I can spell it right, that'll help us remember. And if you look down here now we actually see, oh, that's the word animation, that's the word technique. Just simplifies it. I'm a huge fan of simplifying things, making it so my brain understands it. If Resolve puts nodes in places that confuse me, I'm going to move them so that they make sense for my brain. If Resolve names something text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4, I'm going to change the name so my brain looks at it and says, oh, that's the word animation, and that's the node controls the word technique. Got it. Nice and easy. I can see it right there inside of Fusion. So don't be afraid to change things around so it makes sense for your brain. If you like seeing things in a different way, move things around so they make a little more sense. If you want those below, above, you can move all those nodes around and then have it do exactly what you want, right? So now that I have these here, one of the things I want, we had the word animation started on the left, shot in, and then stayed in the center. We want the word technique to do a similar thing, but why don't we have it start off on the right? Hold on, I gotta actually show you. I'm not even sharing my screen. Let me do this. We had the word animation start on the left, shoot in, right? And then got to the center point. Why don't we have this word technique start on the right, shoot in, and then meet over here? So they're kind of coming in from different angles. Wouldn't that be cool? One comes in from one side, one comes in from the other. So to do that, I want them to meet at the exact same time, right? I want the word technique to be on screen at the same time the word animation lands right there. Well, an easy way to find that is let's select the first transform for the word animation. The reason I'm selecting that is because I can see the keyframe. That's where it was dead center. What I can do is I can move the playhead over there and it'll allow me to know that's exactly where I want to set another keyframe for the other word. So I'm going to put the playhead right on top of that keyframe, right there. It's now right on top of that keyframe for the word animation, okay? I'm going to switch and I'm going to select the transform node for the other word technique. Let's just leave the playhead there, select that other word, and now let's go up to the upper right where the inspector is, and we want to set a keyframe right there to tell DaVinci Resolve, we told you to bring animation in and have it stop right here. We want to make sure that when the word technique comes in, it stops and it's centered right where it is at the exact same point. So I'm going to add a keyframe, and if you see just by clicking that little diamond, now it's red, and it's added a keyframe. Did I move my, yeah, it's added. Did I put the, hope I didn't move the playhead, did I? I think I might have moved the playhead. I moved the playhead. Daniel, don't hit that. Sorry, I got to undo that one. I had the playhead accidentally move on me. Wait a second. See, even I make mistakes along the way. Hit transform, go up, and I'm going to hit that keyframe. Now, if you look, I'm going to move the playhead out of the way. There is a keyframe in the same spot on that number 10 marker. And you can use the markers to do that too. If you knew there was a keyframe on marker 10, what you could have done, you know, from this other one, from looking at the word transform, if I click on the transform node and I said, yep, the first keyframe was at marker 10, I could just move my playhead over to marker 10 and then hit the transform node for the second one. But now what I've done is if I click between the two, they both have a keyframe right there at that number 10 mark, meaning they're both going to be centered right up here together when it gets to that point, when the playhead hits there. But now I want to do the opposite. I want to have the word technique start from the other side. So we're going to do the exact same thing we did with the first text layer, is we're going to move the playhead back to the beginning, right? Because we want it to start right from the beginning of the clip where we want it off screen. So I move that playhead back to the very beginning. And then what I'm going to do with that transform node 2 still selected, and we've already added one keyframe, I'm going to go back up to the upper right inspector, and I'm going to grab that center X, and I'm going to move it to the right this time. I'm going to push to the right. The animation came in from the left, and I want the word technique to come in from the right so they meet in the center. So all I'm going to do is grab that, and I'm going to left click and hold on that number section and just move my mouse to the right, and it'll now push it off screen to the right. Okay, and if I bring the playhead back, what you will see is that the two of these words now come in, whoops, not that one, now come in and meet in the center. You see that? They just come in from the outside. I think I've got this on a loop so you can see it happen again. Boom. They come in and they meet in the center because I had a keyframe saying start out here, one out in the left, one out in the right, and at this point I want them both to meet in the middle. Really simple animation that we just created right there, right? Nothing too confusing, just two layers of text, the word animation, the word technique. We merged them into our projects, but we added transform nodes so that we could add a little keyframe animation. Nice and simple. Okay, is everyone with me so far? Do you understand what we just did? Do you feel like you could do exactly what we did if you have Resolve open? Could you follow along and go, oh, I could do that. I could put two words on screen. I could have them zoom into the middle. I could do what Daniel just did. I think I can do that. I think that makes sense. Let me see. Clayton absolutely says, I think I got it. Pretty good so far. Drew says, yep, 3 thumbs up. I think I can do that. Brian says, yep, I think I can do it. We're getting a lot of good thumbs up. Even our pal Ashlad says, yep, I think I can do that. Real simple stuff here, right? Just moving put some text on screen, adding a transform node so we can put some keyframes in and make them move back and forth. Nice, right? Simple, pretty straightforward. Our good pal Iggy, good to see you, says, yep, Daniel, I'm with you, right? Good, we get a lot of thumbs up. So that part, pretty simple. Now here's where I want to do something different. Let's say we have the two words come into the middle at the beginning of this animated text section we're making. Well, then wouldn't it make sense when it ends to have them zoom off screen, right? They start off screen, come to the middle, they hang there for a while, and then we have them zoom off screen, right? They take back off out to the outsides. We already know how to do that, right? Because we're going to do the opposite of what we just did. We're going to add keyframes and tell Resolve, okay, this is how I want these two different text layers to move when we get near the end. Okay, so let's do that. Let's do that really quickly. This one is basically we're reversing the same process, right? When we were looking at, let me start here. I'm going to go right up here. Basically, this is the playhead at the very beginning. There's a keyframe hidden under there that if I actually move stuff out of the way, you'd see the very first keyframe. Let me move these two beginnings and ends. You'll see there's the first keyframe saying, hey, start outside. And then when the playhead gets to here, we want that word in the middle. So let me move all that stuff back. We just want to do the opposite. We want to actually say, well, Daniel's telling Resolve, you come to here, you stick in the middle, and then how long do I want you to stay in the middle, right? How long do I want the text to stay on screen so people can read it? That's our next decision. Let's say we can hit the play button. All right, the text comes in, it's hanging out about here, and let's say, boom, maybe right about there, maybe 115, 110. That's where I want it to start making its move off screen. Well, the very first thing we need to do in order to accomplish that is we have to add one more keyframe while the text is still in the middle, because we told it to come from off screen, come in and stay in the middle, come and sit in the middle, but we have to add another keyframe at the exact same location to tell it stay here for this long. We told you to come into the middle of the screen, but I have to tell you stay in the middle of the screen till here. Even though we're not moving the text, we have to add another keyframe to basically tell it the beginning of and the end of how long we want it staying in the middle, okay? Nice and simple. So we want to add another keyframe while everything is in the middle to say, okay, stay there until this point. So I'm going to move, what do we say, 110, 115, something like that? If I zoom up right, we said maybe around 100, 110, 115. Let's try it at 110. It doesn't really matter. We can adjust things later. I'm going to go to 110. That's where I'm going to put the playhead. The playhead is now at the 110 mark, right? I've got the transform node selected for the word animation. So the very first thing we're going to try to move and animate at the end is the word animation, because that's the transform node we have selected. So starting with the playhead in the right spot, let's go up to the upper right inspector. Now we had, let me go up here. We had the word animation start off screen, come in and sit in the middle. So at this point, we want it to stay there, right? It's like, stay in the middle, stay where you are to this point where we have the playhead right now. So we want to add another keyframe right there to basically say, stay there to this point. So I'm going to add one more keyframe, right there with the transform node selected for this first word, right? And if I move the playhead just to the right a little bit, you'll see it just added a keyframe. So it now knows when you get to this point, stay in the middle, come in from the outside, stop here, and stay there all the way until you get to here, and then I want a different motion. So we put the first marker in. Now we want to move that playhead forward a little bit and have the word continue to zoom off screen. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy. It's the exact thing we did at the beginning. We're just moving it off screen. So we had the word animation come in. I'm backwards on camera here. We had it come in from the left. Is this your left? My right, your left? We had it come in and hang there. Why don't we have it zoom off screen, continue its path? So we'll have it go in from the left, stay in the middle, and then zoom off to the right. So the way to do that is with the transform node still selected for that word, and we've got our first keyframe in place. Let's move the playhead forward a couple of frames here, up to the 120 mark, let's say. And now let's just move the word animation by grabbing the X right there, that's the left and right, and pushing it, left clicking on the number value up in that little box, putting your mouse right in here, left clicking and dragging the mouse to the right. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the word animation and it's going to move it off screen. I want it completely off screen. Boom. And if you look up in the timeline, right below the preview window, it added another keyframe right there. See, right? That told it stay here to this point. Now zoom off screen to right between here and here. And like anything else, if I put the playhead there and I hit play, watch what happens. It zooms the word animation off screen. So it started with the word animation on the left, keyframe to the center, stay here, stay here, stay here. Now zoom off. Boom. Simple, right? In, out. Transform node, keyframing, in, out. Even our pal Clayton's like, all right, I think I get this, Daniel. I think I get what we're doing, right? Let's do the exact same thing with the word technique, which came in from the right, and let's have it finish its path at the end and go the opposite direction. So they kind of come into the middle, hang out, talk for a minute, hi, and then they zoom past each other and go the opposite direction. So the way to do that, let me get my face out of here, is we actually want to now make sure we know where these changes happened with the word animation and do the exact same thing with the transform node for the other word. But it's just going to go in the opposite direction. That's the only difference. So with the transform node selected for the word animation, it will allow us to see the keyframes for what we did on the first word, right? So why don't we put the playhead right at the first keyframe, which is the 110 marker. And let's say, okay, we want to switch to the other, and don't be freaked out by the word animation coming back in. That's just it doing its thing. Let's switch to the other node, the transform node for the other word. Let's select that. So that's now selected in red, right? Right there. And now let's go up to the upper right inspector where we can control the left and right. And remember, we have to start by telling it where it needs to stay. It needs to stay all the way from this point here to the point where it gets all the way where the playhead is now. So we need to add a keyframe just to tell it to stay there by clicking up here. We're not changing any of these values. We're not changing any of this. We're just telling it stay exactly like it was from that point forward. Now we want to know, well, how quickly did the word animation go off screen? We want to match that motion. So I choose right here, I'm going to click on the transform node of the first word, and you'll be able to see up in the timeline, I had it stay there till the 110, and then it shot off screen at the 120 mark. So let's do the same thing with the other one, just the opposite direction. Let's select the transform node for the other word, technique, select it, and now let's make sure that we have the playhead moved over to the 120 mark, because that's where the other one moved, that's where we want this one to move. Right there. Now I've got the playhead where I want it, and I have the right node, the second node selected, so I can start working with the motion of the word technique. Let's go all the way up to the control panel for the under the inspector to move the second word, and we're going to left click and hold the center value, the X value. That's left and right, and we're going to push in the opposite direction, left on that numbers, and I'm going to hold, push it to the left, so it's off screen. So I now should have two words that start off screen, right? They're going to come into the center, and then they're going to continue off. So if I hit play, they come in, they hang out for a while till they get to that other keyframe to tell it to move again, boom, and they shoot off screen. Super simple, right? Nothing crazy happened here. It was a very simple keyframing, adding two text layers on top of a background, and then adding a transform node so that we could actually get these things to do what we want. So Can everyone see what's happening there? Text comes in, hangs here for this long, and now it shoots off. Does that make sense? I don't want to get ahead of you guys. Thumbs up if you feel like everything I've showed you, you could do so far. Does everything feel like, I got this? I can do this. If it does, give me a thumbs up. If anything has been confusing, give me a thumbs down and ask me any question so far that may have been problematic or that didn't quite make sense. Because I do not want to go, I want every one of you to be able to go into your software later on. You can watch this video again and go, I feel confident. I can go work inside of Fusion. I can build stuff. I can build custom animated text. We got this? Yes, thumbs up, thumbs up. We got another thumbs up. We got a double thumbs up. Right? Good. All right. Nice and easy. We got a C from our friend Iggy. C. Okay, good. 3 thumbs up. So here's where we can really take this to the next level. This is a lot of fun. I do have to take 1 second here before we get a little deeper to thank my sponsors today. The sponsor we have today is StreamYard. StreamYard is exactly what I use to do these live streams. And they're a fantastic company that allows you to actually do the kind of things that I'm doing in your own live streams. If any one of you is interested in live streaming, I'm going to have links down below in the description of this video where you can download StreamYard, sign up for it. It's not a download, it's actually a sign up. It's cloud-based. And you can start live streaming for free today for up to 20 hours a month. Absolutely free. Check it out if you're interested in doing live streams on your own channel. But let's get back to drawing some stuff and making some animated text. Okay, so here we are, right? Thumbs up, everything good. I'm going to go back to this, and this is where we're going to start having some fun, all right? We're going to start having some fun. There are different things that you can do with these to make this a little cooler, to make this pro-level editing. Now, we used keyframes, right? We used some keyframes here. Let me get this to fit so it's a little bit bigger. That's better. As we sit here and we look at this motion, we go, okay, what happens here? Daniel comes in, just hangs there, and then shoots off. But one thing you may or may not see that I see, it's kind of a jerky motion. It's like, bang, sits there, and then bang, shoots off. Sometimes I see like really cool animated text that's like smooth, and the motion is fluid. And it's like, man, that's awesome. Not kind of janky and a little weird. It's like when I see other like professional text animations, overlays, I'm like, man, that looks like, how do they do that? It looks so smooth and so cool. There's some tricks right inside of Fusion that's real, that it's going to take your animated text to the next level. All right. One of the things when we add these keyframes, which we now understand how to add them, if you want to actually look at the keyframes for each of these things, you can do that. Let me show you. Okay. When you have this laid out, let me just open it up. I think we all understand what we're looking at here now, right? We all understand what we're seeing. What we have here, very simple background layer. We merged in one text layer that says animation and put in some controls to be able to move it around. Merged in a second text layer with the word technique and the transform node to move it around. And then just connected them to the output so that it would show up in our project when we go back to the edit page. Simple. But we added keyframes. In this first transform node, we added a bunch of keyframes that told it, you know, hey, word animation, start out here, come into the middle, stay here for this period of time, then all of a sudden shoot off the other direction. Well, we can actually see those keyframes. And if you want to see them, there's 2 ways of doing it. But if you look in the upper right, we're in the inspector. But over here, they have the option to pull up the keyframes. Okay. And there's another option here called spline. Let me explain to you what spline is. Keyframes are very fixed points. Start here, move here, fill in the blank. And the software will just move it. Well, you can not only add keyframes, but the way that those keyframes interact with each other, instead of just come in, stay there, move off, you can use a spline, which again, sometimes DaVinci Resolve uses words that are like, could you have picked a better word so it's easier to understand? But a spline is basically your ability to take those motions and smooth them out, soften them. Maybe you want the text to kind of zoom into the middle, but kind of slow down just before it gets there. Instead of just zipping in and stopping like it hit the brakes, you want it to go a little faster coming in. Then when it gets near the center, it slows down and sits right in the middle. Like a fluid motion, a real professional looking motion. So the way to do that is what you want to do is let's go back to where we put our keyframes in, right? We know we have the transform node that we added keyframes. So what you want to do is with that transform node selected, in the upper right, I want you to, let me see if I can see it, just click on that spline right there. And if you click on that, it's going to open up this window. All right. Now, this is a window that controls those keyframes, those splines. It lets you visually see them. But right now, I don't have any of these boxes ticked. So although I do have the transform node selected, I haven't turned it on in the spline. So the first thing we need to do is tick these boxes. If I hit transform, see how they're all ticked now? And you can actually see the spline down here. This is kind of cool. Let me see if I can get it just so you can see it. Right there. This is the text coming in. This is the text starting from the outside. This is it coming in, and this is it being in the center, and then it stays at the center. All right. So this is your off screen. This is your center screen, and this is how long it's staying in the middle. That's the beginning. And if I actually scroll forward, I'm not that far in the timeline yet. Let me get to here. You'll see I'm moving the timeline playhead up top. You'll see the opposite, right? You'll see, oh, here's what happened, Daniel. And then here was it stayed to that middle for that long and then shot off screen. And each one of these markers is just those keyframes, and you're looking at the time in between them, right? In and then out. Well, there's a cool thing that we can do to change these harsh lines. See, it's like, come in, slam on the, it's right here. Come in, slam. I got to do this right. Make sure you can see it. It's off screen for this whole part. Comes in, bam, slams on the brakes and stays there. Well, there's a thing we can do is if we actually select, just grab your mouse, click in the gray area, and draw a box around the keyframe. Or sometimes you can even click the keyframe. Either one will work depending on which software you're using. Sometimes it's a little different on iPad. And you'll see now this keyframe is selected and it's got these little lines on it. They're like a handle. It's like, what is that green line? What is that green line in that dot? That's a handle. You can actually select that keyframe and you can control this motion. You can see how that's a direct line and it slams on the brakes. Wouldn't it be better if it came in really fast and then slowed down, like it slowed down before it got to the center? Well, to do that, you just want to grab that little handle and lift it up. It'll change the curve of the motion. And if I grab it and lift it up, watch what happens. Let me see if you can see. Can you see now? It's smooth that it made it come in a little faster, because it put an arc on it, and then it slows down before it gets there. That will give that word animation a little more of a smooth motion. So when we're playing with that and we want it to actually come in and kind of, do you see that the timing's a little different? Vroom, and then stops. You can smooth out that motion. And there's different ways to do that, right? There's different ways to do it. You can do this tricks that you'll learn. There's different types of shortcuts and things like that you're going to see that make things a little bit easier to do things. If I undid what I just did right there, if I drew a box around all of those two keyframes, and this is going to get a little confusing, I've just selected both. I selected this keyframe and this keyframe. You can actually hit S on your keyboard and it'll smooth them out. Can you see that? It just did both of them now. It smoothed it out. It made it come in a little slower, speed up, and then slow down. So that S basically took the handles and flattened them out to you. You can actually do that a couple of ways. You can actually select them. Let me undo that real quick. You could actually select both of those by just drawing a box around them, right? Now they're both selected. This one's selected and this one's selected. And you could also hit F for flatten. Hit F on your keyboard and boom, now they're flattened out. And all we're doing when we do that is just changing that motion so it's not so herky-jerky. It's not like slam in, stop, take off. It goes, whoa, it's going to be a little smoother, like kind of zip in, whoa, slow, hit the power brakes and then stop in the center. And you can control those curves. So instead of real herky-jerky key motion with your animation and your text, now you can change the spline of the motion. Smooth, speed up, down. Really simple stuff. Really easy ways to do that. Oh, is that what you're asking? How to undo? Yeah, when I undo a motion, I'm just hitting on PC, it's Control Z. On Mac, it's Command Z. And that'll undo your last motion, the last thing you did. Thanks, Iggy. So depending on your OS, depending on which system you're using, it's either Command Z or Control Z. So once you've got that going, you've just added a little bit of smoothness, right? You can, to the keyframes here in the spline, we've rolled that spline a bit. I mean, if I wanted more of a roll, I could say I could actually drag this over more and grab and create more of a hill, as it were. Like if I grab this and go, hey, why don't I kind of move that left? Let me see what happens here. See, I could pull that and create more of a curve. I'm just going to do a simple curve for now because I pulled this way. I moved it out and it made this curve go steeper. And it just changes the motion. You can choose whatever your motion is. But for right now, I'm just going to keep them both smooth. And then I'm going to go to the end, right? I'm going to go to the end over here. I'm going to select these two as well, just by drawing a box around those two keyframes. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit S. You can do S or F. S is just smooth. F is flattened. Sometimes that makes a slight difference. But for this purpose, with the two keyframes, it does the same thing. Just smooths out the motion curve, all right? And now when the word animation goes in there, it's just a slightly smoother motion. It actually looks like it gets there a hair quicker. It just smooths it out a little bit. And the more dramatic, let me see if I can make it more dramatic so you can really see the difference. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to pull this motion like way over. Let me see if I can keep that straight. There we go. Something like that. All right. Now, if you can see, I grabbed this handle and I pulled it really hard out that way. So the curve is really fast and then takes time to slow down. So now what you're going to see, because I've moved that curve so heavy, that text animation is going to feel like it comes onto screen like really quick and then puts on the brakes right about here and does that last bit. It's going to feel like it gets to the center quicker, but then sort of slowly falls into place. And if I hit play, that's what you'll see will happen. See, animation got there. Oh, and I moved this handle. I've got this one off a little bit. It's a little low, so it's actually moving it off. But that just changes that curve, and you can play with the spline of how smooth you want the curve of it coming in and then sitting there. But one of the cool things is we can go to the end and do the exact same thing, right? We can select the end ones and smooth them out. Once we've done that, we've got the beginning and the end, the motion smoothed between the keyframes a little bit. We can do the exact same thing to the other transform for the other word, right? We know down here, let me get down here. Where are you? I got to make sure I can see these right there. Let me get myself off screen so you guys can follow along. If you see right here, let me move the spline tool just out of the way a little bit. I was working with this transform node. I want to switch and I want to work with this one. All right. So I want to select that by left clicking on it. And now you'll see that one's red. And now I'm going to start working with the spline of the other motion for the other word. Okay. One quick note I should mention is I've got this set. If you look right here, there's a 3-dot ellipsis. For this is the spline window. Okay. We are in the spline window right here. Okay. That's the spline. There you go. It's in the spline window. And when I click on that 3-dot ellipsis, it has an option. Well, it's not going to, I don't know if I'll be able to capture it. Let me see if I can do this. No, it hasn't. It's tough to do this with this particular zoom tool. But at the top, it has an option right here that says show only selected tool. If I turn that off, it'll show all the transform nodes right here. It'll show everything so I can actually work with two at the same time. I like to kind of just work with one at a time. So I hit that 3-dot ellipsis and I only show the one I'm working with, which is this one. It just keeps it less confusing for my silly brain. So I want to work with that one. As before, nothing is selected, so we're not seeing anything. So I want to tick that box that'll turn all the ones under it on. I'll tick that box. Now they're all selected. And then when I go back through this, you will see, I can see, here's the motion where the word technique comes in on screen. I want to smooth that motion out too to match exactly what the word animated did. So I'm just going to draw a box around them and hit S on my keyboard. Smooth, right? Just smooth, just softened that curve of the motion. So it's not so herky-jerky. And let's go to the end and let's do the same thing. Let's just go over to here. Let me scroll up a little bit. You can use, if you don't have, I'm using a center wheel on my mouse. There's some controls here that you can make this thing bigger or smaller depending on what your display is. And you can use the controls on the right and on the left to move it around a bit if it's not centered and it's hard to see. So I'll select those two. I'm going to hit S as in Sam. And it smooths them out. See how it's now smoothed the ending out too? And now I've got the exact same thing happening in the spline for the transform of the word animation as I do on the word technique. Really simple. All I did was smooth it out. I just made the keyframe motion a little smoother. Is everybody with me? Background, one text layer we merged in, a second text layer we merged in. We added a transform node so we could put some keyframes to move the text around on screen. Told it, right? Added keyframes, told it what to do. And then once the keyframes were there, we opened up the spline by selecting the transform node we wanted to work on. And I moved the spline and I just selected the keyframes and I hit S on my keyboard. Smooths them out, makes the motion a little less herky-jerky. Cool, yes, thumbs up. We all good? Give me thumbs up if we're so far you go, it's a lot of information, Daniel, but I think I'm with you. I think I can do it. I think I could follow along and do exactly that and build exactly what you built, Daniel. If you can, then we're in a good place. That means this is exactly what I want to do. I want to make sure you guys can literally tell me step by step, I get this. I can do this. I think I got it. Thumbs up. Yes, we've got thumbs up, big thumbs up, big thumbs up. I got an I got a I'm reading that with like a little Southern accent. It's got a little, okay, thumbs up. Let me see. Estimate Sky said it's amazing how powerful DaVinci is for free. Blender, yeah, really, I totally agree. And everything I'm pretty much showing you here is all available on the free version. You can do this in Fusion on the free version. Make sure when you're working in Fusion that you have a computer that meets the recommended, not just minimum, but the recommended standards, because Fusion is a resource hog. It will use up a lot of your system resources and it can bog your computer down. So make sure you're running it on a strong computer. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll actually go up to the playback option up top. If you look up here, and I'll actually take the timeline proxy resolution, which is this option here. Let me show you timeline. Let me see playback, timeline, and I will set it. Right now it's set for full. I'll move it back to half just because if I start getting in deep, what'll happen is it can start, even on a good computer, I have a good one, it can start lagging out on you and start giving you issues. So I'll move that playback to half, only half resolution. Keeps it a little smoother in here, makes things run a little bit easier. If you have some lag, you might want to try that. Okay, so real simple. We've got our layers, we've got our keyframes, we smoothed out the motion. Let's do something else. Let's make it even cooler. You know what would be cool? One of the reasons I think that text looks still kind of jerky, even though we smoothed it out, is the text just shoots on screen. If I hit play, let me deselect everything over here. I'm going to turn off the spline, right? I'm going to go, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on that button so that I can remove this spline box. I don't need this one right here. I don't need this box down here anymore. So I'm going to click on that on the upper right and it takes it back away. If I need it later on, I can select whatever node I want to change the spline of the keyframes, and then I can hit that spline in the upper right and bring it back. But for right now, I want it out of my way. I just want to be able to see what's going on down here in this area, make it nice and easy, okay? Whoop, I just moved it. So now that I've got this going on, I think one of the reasons this feels a little kind of jerky to me is when you just hit play, it just shoots in. In real life, when something kind of moves in front of your eye, it'll blur, right? Like if I took my hand and I moved it quickly in front of the camera, depending on what the frame rate is, in real life, when we see things move, they blur out because our eye, it doesn't track at 240 frames per second. It tracks, it sort of has a motion blur, because when things move for us, you'll see them as blur. When a car goes by really quickly, it feels like a blur, right? So what would be cool is to add some motion blur to the text when it comes in and goes out, because it'll feel more real life. It'll feel more like what our brain perceives as motion. If it goes quick, if we want to make it feel like it's quick, let's add some blur. We can do that, okay? So what we want to do is, I got to remember where the blur is. It's going to take me a second. I got to think about where I put it. I believe it is in the, okay, this is where I have to remember things. I want to put blur starting with the word animation. That's where I want to add the first blur. So I'm going to click on the transform node, all right? Down in the timeline, it's now selected. And you can call me wrong if I blow this. Up here, we're in the controls section. That was controlling, moving it left and right. But there's another tab called settings, okay? So let's go up and click on settings, okay? And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see motion blur, okay? Now there are keyframes and stuff, but for this particular application, all we need to do is turn on motion blur, and wherever we've added keyframes, it's going to create the blur in that motion. So if I go back to the beginning, watch the word animation as it comes on screen. Poof. You see how it was blurry? Do you see how it came in? Let me see if I can get you a better view of this so you can see what's happening. You can actually do it frame by frame here. See as it comes in, what is that, 4 frames, 5 frames, 5 frames. Do you see how the word technique over on the right is still very crisp? That's not how our eye would see it. But if we look at the word animation, it's got like a blur to it. It's getting blurred out. And that helps create that cool motion effect, right? It really sells the motion of it. So why don't we do the exact same thing to this other one? Why don't we make sure the word technique does a blur? Let's select the transform node so we can control that on the word technique. There it is, selected, surrounded in red right here. Let's go to the upper right again, and let's make sure we switch over to the settings option, the settings tab. Click on that, and when we do that, you will see, whoops, sorry for the jerky motion. There's also an option for motion blur for that transform node. So let's click it. Let me see if I can get this to scroll in for me if it wants to. Come on, baby. Good. There we go. I've ticked that box that you can change some of the blur, motion blur settings. I'm just going to leave them as they are. I'll let you guys play with them later on to decide how different you want your motion blur. But just turn it on, and now when we see both the word animation and the word technique come in, you will see now they both have a blur, right? Now it's like, oh, wait a second. That has a blur, and now that has a blur. And it not only has a blur coming in, but it will come in, blurred, stop at center, sit here for a minute, and then when it goes out, it blurs again. Did you see that? When we were going out, you see the minute it starts moving, that blurs again. So now we've upped the level of this animation, right? We've taken it, we've got it moving, we've got it stopping in center, we've got it blurring when it shoots in and shoots out. Starts really bringing this animated text to another level, right? Really something cool. Now I'm going to show you another thing that you can do here with what we have on screen to really create some cool effects. Because I think you understand now when you look at the nodes. I think make sure is there anything here that I've done that is confusing? Because I'm going to do one next level and I think you'll really like the next step. Is everything so far clear and understandable? We added a background. We added a text layer and merged it in. We added another text layer and merged it in. We added transform nodes to each text layer so we could do some other cool things with motion. And then we just smoothed out the spline when we added keyframes in motion to make it a smoother motion. And then in that motion, we added motion blur. Real simple. Good. Thumbs up. Yes. Give me a thumbs up if so far you say, yes, I got you, Daniel. I can do everything to this point. I think I got this too. Even though it's a lot of steps, I think I got it. And I think this makes sense. If it does, give me a quick thumbs up. All right. And I want to make sure that every one of you can now look at this. Let me just move this a little bit bigger so you can see it. I want to make sure that every one of you can look at this and have it make sense. If you look at this block of nodes, when I first opened up Fusion the first time, I was like, are you kidding me? What the heck is all this? But I want to make sure that all of you can go, I understand. That's a background he put there. Then he merged in some text, the word animation. He merged in another layer of text, the word technique. They're all connected through to the output, right? To make sure you can see it. And then he added in between the text and the merge nodes, a transform node so he could take each of these words and do more things with them, make them move the way he wanted. Does that all make sense? We got thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. I love it. Thumbs up, thumbs up. We're making sense here. Yes? Yes, cool. All right. This is really my goal today. I want every one of you, when we're done here, which we're pretty close to getting through, I want you to be able to go home and go, I'm going to open up Fusion with confidence. And I'm going to go play around with it. I'm going to make my own animated text. I'm going to make my own lower third. When I'm talking, if I want to make a subscribe button that pops in there and does some things, I'm going to make it myself. And I'm going to save it so I can use it later on too. This is one of the cool things about using Fusion. And once you understand this, once you understand what we're doing here today, I guarantee if you try it at home and you get comfortable, you'll be able to go watch some of those advanced Fusion techniques and tutorials, and you'll go, wow, you know what? I don't know all of those features, but it makes sense. I'm understanding how they're adding in things. They're starting with one thing and they're just slowly adding in components to get this final output that takes the original thing and animates it, makes it glow, makes things move around. You'll start seeing it as the ability to take something and just add in blocks that give it more instructions, right? And then sends it out to the output. And now you've got a clip. Now you've got a clip. All right, everybody up at this point. I am at this point. I will try not to lose you, Clayton. Okay, I'll do my best to stay right in here. We're all good so far. All right. Oh, this one, I love it. Go home, everybody but me at work. All right, I'm at work right now. This is where I work. I'm at my workstation. So let's pick up from here. Now we're going to do something different, and I want to show you why some of these different nodes do different things, especially when it comes to text. There's different instructions. That transform node that we added under each text layer allows you to move it around on screen, like take it from here, move it over to there. It's really about taking the text and moving it all over the entire screen. But the text block itself has another set of controls that aren't so much about getting it to move from the left to the right, but more about getting just the text itself while it's in one spot to do stuff, to get the letters to do different things, to get it to move, rotate. There's a whole set of controls just in the text block that are a little bit different than the transform node. And I want to show you some of the cool things you can do. All right. So here we are. I want to do one other thing. You know what I thought would be cool? This is an idea. How about this? As we're looking at this, right? Let me pull this down so we can see it a little bit. The way we have this set up, let's hit this to fit so it fits. Animation comes in, it's going to come in, zoom in, stays here for a little bit, and then it zooms off screen. It would be kind of cool if it came in, sat here for a minute, and then did maybe a little wiggle. Like it did while it's sitting there, did like a little something, a little shimmy, a little shake, a little something that was like, instead of just sitting there on screen, wouldn't it be cool if it had like a little kind of little jump or a hop or something that kind of caught your eye? So like if it was a lower third and it slammed in there, did a little motion. Let's add that in. This is where the text node itself can be really useful. And I want to show you something that's a little bit of a hidden feature that sometimes if you're just using Fusion for the first time, you may not even know this in here. All right, so let me start here. Let me get my face out of this and let's go down and let's look at these. All right. I want the word animation when it comes in screen. I want just everything to sit here. I'm just dragging the timeline, maybe right about here. Yeah, maybe about the 45 mark. Can you see where I am? I've just moved the playhead to frame 45 or the 45 mark. I want the word animation to do something like a little hop, skip, and a motion that's very unique, that makes people go, oh, that's different. That caught my eye. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go here and I'm going to select not the transform node. I'm actually going to select the animation text node. All right. So let me select that and you'll now see, right? It's surrounded in red. That means it's selected. Now in the upper right, this is really something that's funny. If you look, I'm on the inspector. I selected the text node for the word animation. It's got a tools tab. And then it's got this other tab that's completely grayed out that says modifiers. It's just, but you can't read it. It's like, well, if I try to click it or anything, right? If I go up there and I click that thing, nothing will happen. It's like, it's not doing anything. Well, that's a really cool hidden feature in here that allows you to do some very cool kind of stuff. And I want you to make sure that you do this first before you add any animation. I want you to do the following steps, okay? Up in the text block itself, let me get zoomed in here. In the text block itself, right here, all of this gray area, what I want you to do is right click. And when you right click, it'll open up an options menu. You can't see it because it disappears when I zoom. But there is the word follower. Can I get it? No, it won't let me do it. There is the word follower right here. Hard to see, I know. I wish I could zoom in on that word. This zoom tool won't let me. But you click the word follower and you will notice that now the animation block is surrounded in red. See how it's now highlighted? And if you go to the upper right, the modifiers is now enabled. You can click that modifiers tab. We couldn't do that before. Remember, it was like all grayed out. It's like, oh, well, there it is. Now it's activated. We haven't done anything yet, but we're activating this modifier, which is going to change just the text in its place. We're going to be working with not moving the text around screen, but while it's sitting there, I don't want to change it around the screen. I kind of want it to do something. I want it to hop, to bubble, to skip. I want it to do something fun, all right? So you turn on the follower first before you do anything else. Right-click in the text area, choose follower. I'll explain what follower is. Now, what I want you to do is go up and actually select that modifier tab, okay? Click on that. And when you click on that, we'll have another set of tools that allow us to do different things with that text node, that word animation that we're working with, okay? It's got different things that we can do, and it's got keyframes we can add. Now, this feature here, if I changed anything, like it says like delay, there's all these different things. If I grab that delay slider and just pushed it up, nothing happens. Nothing happens on screen. Nothing changes at all. What you have to do is actually add keyframes first for any of this stuff to work. So what we're going to do is I'm going to, while we're still under the modifiers tab, right? We clicked follower, and then now the modifiers tab is enabled. We clicked on the modifiers tab. I want you to use the transform option from inside the modifiers tab. Okay, so we're going to click on that. And when I click on that, you will now see there's a whole bunch of different options here, right? There's a whole list of options from this transform node for what we can do. And they have all these different controls. And again, if I'm sitting right here, let's say, you see how this says like XYZ? These are like those same kind of rolling knobs that you use. We use them in color page and stuff. You kind of can left click on them and drag them, left click, hold and drag left and right. If I were to grab the top one, the X, all right, I'm going to grab this one right here, the X. I'm going to left click and I'm going to pull it back and forth. All right. Watch the word animation. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. The reason nothing happens is in this situation, we need to always add a keyframe first. I know it's a weird thing to remember, but we got to make sure we add a keyframe first. All right. So I'm just going to reset this whole thing. Make sure I reset the value to 0. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up next to that X up in the upper right here. And I'm going to just put a random keyframe just to show you what happens. Let me add a keyframe first. I've clicked it. You can now see there's a red keyframe right here. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing and grab this wheel. Whoop, sorry for the jumpiness. I'm going to grab this wheel, left click, hold, and move it back and forth. And this is the X value. But watch how this X value works in rotation. Watch the word animation. It like lays it down, right? It's like it's flopping it back and forth, like it's pivoting, like its feet are stuck to the ground and it's falling forward to the ground and backwards, right? That is what, once you add a keyframe, you can do with that value. All right, let me zero that out again. Now I'm going to grab the Y. I'm going to grab the one right below it. I'm going to grab the Y value here, okay? Now remember, I have to add a keyframe first. So I'm going to add that keyframe right there. And now I'm going to grab the Y and I'm going to move it. Look what it does. Can you see this? Let me make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. Let me fit it to the screen. Come on, fit. It takes the individual letters and turns them. It pivots them. But each letter, one by itself, not the whole word, each individual letter. Isn't that crazy? It's like, wow, look at the control I have right now over this thing. I'm changing this each letter one by one. Kind of cool, right? Now let me do the same thing with the third option, right? I'm going to go up to the same thing. I'm in the transform area of the modifier tab. I'm going to add a keyframe onto the Z so I can show you what Z does. It won't do anything until I add a keyframe. I've added that keyframe. Here it is. And now I'm going to grab the Z and I'm going to look at this. Now each letter rocks back and forth. So this is the kind of crazy control we can do. This is just some of the things we can do with the individual word and the letters. When we're in that modifiers tab from the text node, we activated it by right-clicking where we wrote the text, the word animation, activated it. Now we're flopping those around, right? Super control. We can do crazy stuff now. But like I said, I want to do like a little hop, but I don't want to make the whole word hop. I want to make it feel like it's hopped and stretched. Okay, so watch this. That XYZ, I'm actually not going to use right now. Okay, this section here, I could do crazy stuff. You could do it, right? But for right now, I'm not going to use those. I'm actually going to use the X and Y. That's the size section. I've expanded that by hitting these little arrows. It opens it up. And I'm going to use the X and the Y, specifically the Y value. To show you what those do, watch. Remember, you always have to add a keyframe. If I just grabbed just the X and I start stretching it off to the right, I'll do that right now. What happens? Nothing. Because in this particular application, when you're in the modifiers tab, you have to add a keyframe first. So if I add a keyframe, I had that down to 0. That's screwing it up because it's like, wait a minute, you shrunk it down to nothing, Daniel. Let me just quickly undo that. Put that back to, the set value for this is 1. That's the set value. So let me move that back to 1. And then 1, hello, 1. There we go, enter, cool. Now I'm gonna add that keyframe, all right? So as you can see, I've now added a keyframe next to the X, right? You can see that? Okay, now watch what happens when I now use the slider for the size X value. Look what it does. it makes the individual letters move left and right. But remember before when we were in the transform node down at the bottom that we attached to the text node, it moved the whole word. This X and Y value in the modifier is just stretching those letters left and right. But it's not moving the word, it's just making them fatter. I can make them fatter, I can make them skinnier, make them super skinny, right? I can have them appear from nothing and then suddenly come onto screen so you can read them. So there's all these neat X left and right control. But as we learned when we were keyframing, X controls left and right. The other thing that we can do is we can turn on the keyframe for Y. You see I added a keyframe right there, so it activates this. If I grab the Y value, watch what the word animation does. It stretches it up and down. Instead of left and right, it's up and down. So now it feels like it's kind of, like lifting up a little bit, right? Would it be cool? I want to see this thing kind of hop by just stretching up and down. And I want to find a very fixed point for it to do that during this, during the playback, right? When we do it. And I think we kind of said right about here, right? Maybe around that 45 mark. Let's just pick some place after it's been sitting on screen for a few minutes. That's where I get the playhead. It actually put a keyframe there because I added that keyframe right here. I actually don't want it to do that right there. Let me show you what I actually wanted to do. As we learned before, and you tell me if this still makes sense. Remember when we started before, we had to add keyframes. We had to have a keyframe off when we were just moving the words into the center. We had to put a keyframe for it to start off screen. We had to have a keyframe for where we wanted to stop in the middle of the screen. We had to let it sit there and add another keyframe to say, stay in that same spot from here to here, and then zoom off. So it was 4 keyframes, one from the outside, one when it got to the center, one to tell it, okay, stop being in the center, and then the last keyframe telling it where it needed to end up. So what I want to do is the same thing with this hop. I want to say, come on screen and stay just like you are to here. But then I want you to lift up, and then I want you to go right back down to your original size. So it's going to be 3 keyframes. Stay where you are to here, keyframe. Lift up, keyframe, go back down, keyframe. And then do all that. And I want you to animate all the motion in between. So that's what we're going to add right now. Okay, that's going to quickly add this little hop into this screen. So I like where the playhead is, right? So what I'm going to do is over on the right here, I'm going to, with this default value here is 1. So I'm going to add a keyframe. Now I've added a keyframe. It's right under the playhead right here at the 45 mark. And if I move, you will now see, okay, I see what you did, Daniel. You had the text node here selected for the word animation. That's the one we're working with. Right down here. You had this selected and you had the modifier on and you added a keyframe. So now what I want to do is I want to move that playhead actually forward a little bit. Maybe to, I don't know, let's say 60, okay? So I'm going to move it ahead a little bit. And I want it, let me do it this way. I'm going to make sure this makes sense. I'm making a little bit of a mountain, right? I want it to go, stay here, hop up, and come back down. And because it's already at that point of the down, I'm going to do the left and the right and then move the middle of it. I don't know if that makes sense. I want to make sure it does. I'm going to have you stay here, but I'm going to set the outside key points, keyframes first, because the word animation is exactly where I want it at the beginning of the hop and the end of the hop. And then I just have to move the middle, like the mountain point of bringing it up. So I'm going to try it that way and make sure this makes sense. If I confuse you, let me know. Okay. So there it is, right? I want it to go, this is what I'm going to have it do. I'm going to have the word animation stay at this size to right here, that keyframe. I want to have it hop up and then have it come back down. And seeing how it's already at the down point, it's easier for me to just move the playhead over here and add another keyframe so that these 2 points are identical. The down and the down, and then go back and add the middle one where it hops up. So let me do that. I've moved the playhead forward. I've got the word animation selected. Let me go over to the Y, which is right here. And I'm going to add another keyframe so that at that point, let me move the playhead. Nothing's going to change right now because all I've told it is, hey, to here, it's going to stay like that and through all of this and then keep going. I haven't moved anything, but I want to add 1 keyframe in the middle telling it to hop. So with the same selection, I'm going to move that playhead somewhere in the middle of all of that. Let's say right there. See how I'm now in the middle of these 2 keyframes? I've got the playhead right in the middle. Let's move this up. Let's add another key. We don't have to add the keyframe. We just have to make the motion. So I'm going to go over to that Y selector that controls the height, that stretches it upward. And I'm just going to slide it a little bit to the right. See the word animation stretching? Let's stretch it up. How about that high? And if you can see, it has now added that keyframe in the middle, right? So we made the mountain. Normal size, but in the middle, stretch it up right here. Stretch that up. And if I play, watch what happens. You'll see the word animation just hop up and go back down. Just a little hop. Nothing too crazy. It just lifted up, back down. Using the Modifiers tab, playing with the letters, stretching them up, stretching them back down. 3 keyframes. Stay to this, stay normal to here, then stretch up to this next keyframe right here at this point, and then go back to where you were. Sometimes I'll do the outsides first because it's already there. Instead of having to go up and then remember what the default value was to bring it back down, I'll do the 2 outside points first and change the middle. Does that make sense? I know that's a little confusing. Thumbs up if you're with me to this point. If there's any questions, put a thumbs down and ask me if there was any portion of this that didn't make sense to you, of just getting this thing to hop up by opening up the modifiers and getting a little stretch by adding a few more keyframes just to get the letters to stretch. Thumbs up if you got it. Ashley, I know, Ashley, this is like, okay, I think I'm getting it. Now this is all I'm going to leave this live stream up as a replay so you can come back to it. And I'm actually working on another version of this as a regular video that moves a little bit quicker and has a little better screen capturing. So I'm going to make an edited version of this that's a little quicker and you'll be able to see some of the features better. But unfortunately, I can't always interact with you when I'm doing a live one. So that's why I'm doing it here. Okay. Got it so far. Keto Simple, good to see you, my man. So far, good, fire, got it. Thumbs up, thumbs up. I know this is like, man, like there's a lot of little buttons and you're going deep. And am I going to remember where you found that feature? That's why I'm going to, make sure leave these things up for replay so you can follow through while you have the software open, pause it and go, okay, I got you, Daniel. I saw you do it live. That means it can be done. You didn't do any fancy editing. You did it live at work. That means I can do it at home too. Okay. Perfect. Lots of good thumbs up here. Awesome. Great, Raul. Great. Darian. I love it. I love it that this is making sense. Let's jump back in. Now, remember I had made you guys, or I'd asked you guys before we started using the modifiers tab, what we had done was we had right-clicked inside of the word animation here and chosen the word follower. And that's what opened up the modifier tab. This is where this gets to an extra level of cool, okay? Extra level of cool. If you click on follower first, that hop, the way, how all the letters went up and all the letters went down, right? Like if I just play through this, watch what happens. We know that as I hit play, it goes through, all the letters at the same time went up and went down. Well, there's a thing that we can do so that we can change that interaction. And let me show you what I mean. If we go under the modifiers tab in the upper right, and we go, let me get this right. Let me make sure I got you. We've been working in the modifiers tab under the transform option, right? We're in modifiers, we use transform, and we were playing with this Y axis to make the size, to make the letter go stretch up and then stretch back down. Yes? In the same modifiers tab, I want you to switch over to timing. There's a timing. It's the first one, all right? So I want you to go here. Now that you've got the motion built for the letters, go to timing. And if we click on the timing tab, I want to show you the options up here. There is an order here and a delay. I'm going to click on the order. Hopefully I'll be able to make you see this. Okay. This is the order of how we're going to have, right now, all the letters in the word animation are going up and down at the same time. But wouldn't it be cool if they went up like a wave? You ever been to the ball? I don't know if you guys are baseball fans at all, but have you ever seen a baseball game on TV or any sports, a lot of sports game, the audience will do the wave. What happens is different people stand up in the crowd and lift their hands in the air and they go around in a circle and they literally go around the stadium and different people stand up and sit down and they go around the stadium doing it. And it looks like a wave. And all it is just different people standing up. Once they see the guy next to you sit down, you stand up and it looks like a wave. They call it the wave going around the audience at like a sports game. Well, you could do a similar thing with the text. Instead of having all the letters go up and down, you can have it do a wave where like the A goes up first and then the other ones follow suit. Let me show you how to do that. So we already have the motion in here. We have the motion right here. It just goes up and down, right? That's what it does. Well, if we go up to the order, which is up here, we can choose, let's go left to right, which means the A would happen first, than the letters after it, right? Start from the left to the right. I'm going to select left to right. Now you will see that left to right is selected in the order, and the delay is set at 0. So they're all going up and down at the same time. If I take this delay fader and move it to the right, what it's going to do is it's going to set a delay time so that it makes the other letters go a little later in the game. If you watch, let me put this in the middle. See, like you saw, they were all going up together, but I'm going to move it to the right so that the A goes up first, and that these other ones, it's a little slower. And if I hit play, watch what happens. Instead of them all going up, it'll actually do the wave. Wave. Isn't that cool? See what just happened there? Instead of them all going up at once, it's like, boop, little hop. So now it's got like a cool motion that's like a little ripple wave in it, right? Kind of cool, like a little motion there. I actually wish that was a little bit different. All we did was we added the order in, right? We just went to the timing. Instead of having the timing be all go up at the same time, let's have the timing move from left to right so there's a wave that goes through the word animation. Pretty cool, huh? This is something that when you get into Fusion, you get some really good control, and you'll be able to do things that you couldn't just do like in your timeline by adding all kinds of layers of text. Now we can do cool stuff, right? So let me show you one other thing. Remember we used the spline tool because we added keyframes earlier than when two words were coming from the outside towards the middle. The spline softened it and it changed some of the motion. Well, this is a nice little ripple motion, but we can get deeper, all right? I'm going to leave the word technique. I'm only going to do this to the word animation. But if I go down into the node area, I still have the word animation selected, right? Let's open up that spline tool like we had before. So in the upper right, remember that spline tool? That's the one that let us create better curves between the keyframes so that the motion isn't just, up, down, back, forth, really harsh and jerky. Let's click on spline and open that up, all right? Now, just as before, let me slide this so I have to move things around so you can see everything. Let me get this going. Let me see, and this gets going. Okay. Now, whoops, I moved it off screen. There it is. I want to select, we're working with the animation node, the node for the text node for the word animation. With that selected, that's where we just added that modifier and the follow and the motion of it stretching and added that wave motion. So we keep that selected. We click on, whoop, am I blocking it? Let me get my face out of there. But you see, all I did is we have that text animation node selected right there. Now we had clicked on that, and when we open up the spline, we're back to this thing. Here it is, here's all the things, but they're not selected. So once again, we need to click on that so it opens up and activates everything underneath it. So let me do that and click on that. And if we look right here, you can see, this is also another playhead right here. I don't know if you can see that, but this is another playhead you can drag inside of the spline tool. So you don't always have to be going just under the preview window. You can grab it here, left click, hold, and drag it back and forth. And if I drag, if you see right here, this is that motion, right? This is where it was, the letters themselves did the wave, went up and then came down. That's that motion. And if I drag the playhead over it, watch the text up in the preview window. See it? There it is. Boom. Now, remember what we did before? We were like, oh man, we smoothed out the motion. We can do that again. We can draw a box around everything right there, right? And that will select all of it. Let's select all of those keyframes. Now they're all selected. And all we're going to do is hit S as in smooth, on our keyboard, and see what it just did right there. It just smoothed them all out. Now they're a little bit smoother. They're all selected, but it smooths that curve. So instead of a sharp point motion, now it kind of smooths up a little bit and kind of rolls back down and in. So it's a little bit smoother. Another thing we can do, though, is we can actually change some of the motion points. I can select just one of those keyframes. I'm just selecting the top point. I actually want to see if I can get it to sort of slowly do the wave up and then snap back down fast at the end. So the way to do that is just select that center keyframe, and I'm going to move it more towards the right. See what I just did? See what I did there? It was over here. I just grabbed this little center point, and I just, with my mouse left click and held, and I moved it back that way. So now the motion is like up and snap. It's fat. It's not an even amount up and down. It's slower on the rise and then a snap at the end. Just by using the spline tool and changing the motion, the way those key points the keyframes interact. And if I go back, you'll see, look at the preview window up here. Watch what the motion does. You'll see that a bit. up, snapping down at the end. It's a little faster. And you can go even faster than that. The more I exaggerate that, if I were to really pull that over, like let me go higher and really close to the end. Can you see what I just did? I just grabbed this keyframe and pushed it way over there. So you can really start moving things around and snap it hard. If I go back to the play, and snaps hard, right? And you can even see it here. It's moved the keyframe. You see the keyframe center was here and I've moved it way back over there. Now it's way over here near the end instead of being in the middle. I just want it slightly off. I don't want it dead center. I don't want it that extreme. I just want it slightly off, a little higher. So it's not quite center, just so it rolls a little bit. So a little longer in the up and then down. I can turn that spline off now. And now in that section, moves through, right? If I wanted to speed that up, maybe I thought that happened too slow. One of the things I could do is, again, with the same animation node, the text node selected, I could open up the spline and I can say, hey, why don't I move this a little closer? Why don't I grab these keyframes? Because the farther away they are, the slower the motion. Why don't I grab these keyframes and move them closer? A little bit closer to the beginning so that motion happens quickly and ends quickly. So I can just left click and hold and I could drag those in if I wanted to. I could do that here, or I could do it. Another way to do that one would be to go open up the keyframes window in the upper right, and I could do it up here as well. Let me close the spline down because I haven't showed you this one yet, the keyframes window. I'm going to show only the one we're working with. And if I scroll, can you see it in here? It's selected animation. You could do the same thing by seeing, sometimes it's hard to see this one sometimes. It doesn't always show up. Let me expand it. It's a little small. Sometimes it hides in here. Let me see if I can find it for you. Where are you? There it is. Okay. So you can also see it here. I could also choose to open up this window and you can see that motion here. I could actually grab these keyframes in the keyframe window, left click on those white lines and move them left or right to get that motion to be a little snappier. I'm going to move this whole center in. I'm moving the whole section right now because the whole thing's selected. But if I actually select each individual ones, I'm going to move these each closer. And all I've done is I've shortened this time frame. I actually took this keyframe and I moved them over using the keyframe window. It's just another way to control these keyframes. That you can use the spline, you can use the keyframe window. The spline will let you control more of the fluid motion. The keyframes is just more the static motion. Move them left, move them right, make them closer together, farther apart, in case you do choose to move them. But I usually try to get them as close as possible when I'm building the animation, so when it's done, I don't have to do a ton of adjustments. But let's quickly take a look at what we built, and I want to make sure you guys all followed along. This thing, let me see. Let me get rid of all the keyframe windows. Let me deselect. Let me preview window. Is my P going to show? No, I can't get my preview to show. Why are you not showing for me? Deactivate it. So I'm going to go here. Let me go a little bit bigger. From the beginning, the text comes in from the outside, motion blur, does a little hop, stays here, shoots off screen. Nice and simple, right? That was all done in Fusion. Comes in, a little bit of hop, then goes off screen. We have now created a Fusion composition that has that text happening. But I want to add one more thing in here that's really important. You guys know when you add text on top of like your video, maybe making a YouTube video, and you want it to, the text to maybe be a lower third, it happens down in the corner or something. You got to make sure it's transparent, right? You got to make sure that you don't want that big black background covering everything. You put it in, it's like, well, now all I see is the text and a big black background. I wanted to be on screen or have something happening on screen, and the text came in and did that as an overlay. Super simple. All you want to do is the background node, right? This one right here. We want to make sure we have that selected. Select your background node. That's that black background. We just added it in. It was our first layer. We needed it to get the project started. With that selected, I want you to go over to the inspector on the right? We're on the inspector tab. And I want you to scroll down to the bottom and right here, see where it says alpha? Alpha controls the transparency of that layer. Right now, it's all the way to the right. It's over here. We need to drag that back and watch what happens to, I'm going to put the playhead where the word animation is. Right now, there's the word animation technique on screen with a black background. But again, I'm just grabbing the alpha layer from the background node, and I'm going to pull it to the left and watch what happens. That old checkerboard. That old familiar checkerboard telling us there's nothing here. The checkerboard is just the way that most softwares tell you this is transparent. They show you that checkerboard just to let you know there's transparency. But it doesn't show up as a checkerboard. And when you put it into your project, it just shows, that's just letting you know the background's been removed. So we now have this complete Fusion composition that if I start from the left and right and I play it, whoop, not that one, and I play it, comes in, sits there, transparent, does a little hop, shoots off screen. Kind of cool, right? Kind of cool. And we did it all using Fusion. And when we look here, it's like, well, was that really, really confusing? When you see all these nodes now, do you go, uh-oh, well, what is this, Daniel? You go, no, I think I get it. That was your background. Then you merged, with a merge node, another layer of text on top of it. You added a transform to do some extra levels of controls, making it zip around the screen. And you did the exact same thing with the word technique. You merged that in, and you put a transform node so I could have it zip around screen. And then it all went out to the output. Everything was connected through our main signal path. That's our guitar. There's our effects pedals. And that's our amplifier. And we sent it out. Now, what's really cool is if you go back to the edit page, and I just play this. I'm just playing this from the edit page. Boom. There it is. There it is. Does its hop? And out it goes. Now, it's got a black background, right? You go, wait, Daniel, the background's black. That's only because in the edit page, the default transparent black background looks like black. They just color it black. Let me just grab this. I'm just grabbing this Fusion composition, and I'm moving it up by left-clicking and dragging it up to another track so I can bring in something else and put something behind it. So let me just bring anything in. I'll just bring anything in the world. I'll do anything. I'll bring this. What do I have for an image here? Stream. There we go. That was it was just a graphic from performance of my stream yesterday with Mr. Dean Emmon. Now, if I play this, actually, let me get something that's like a face. Whoops. That's like a face because it'll make more sense if you have something that you're used to seeing. Let me see. You got like a little video of me talking or something really quick. So let's go here. Let's go video. There's good. There's some footage. So here's some random footage of me doing, whatever I was doing, filming something, clapping. Boom. Look at me clapping. I know how to clap. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So I'm talking right here. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to get this lined up so it makes sense. Okay. So all I did here, let me mute this so you're not hearing anything. All it is I'm sitting there talking and the word animation technique comes in, hops, and then goes off screen. I can change that and do more with it, right? What I can do, I want to talk to you about what you can do at this point now that you've made it. You've made this Fusion composition. Right now it just says Fusion composition. If we scroll down, it's like, okay, well, how the heck am I going to remember what that is? With the Fusion composition selected, all right, right here, I've just selected it. I've left click, see how it's now surrounded in that red border around it to let you know it's selected. With it selected, go up into the upper right, and you see where it says File under the inspector? I want you to click on File. And if you go up there, you'll see that you can rename it, all right? Right now it just says Fusion Composition 1. Let's rename it, and I'm going to call, well, why don't we just call it Animation Technique because that's what the text says on screen. Be super easy to remember. Oh yeah, that's one right. It says Animation Technique. So I rename it Animation Technique. If I spelled that right. Knowing me, I probably didn't. Did I get it right? How close was I with my bad eyes? Hey, I got it. All right. But after I did that, if you notice, I wrote Animation Technique, and now this Fusion composition is named Animation Technique. Boom. I know what that is now. And what's really cool is you can save this in a bunch of different ways. Now, there's one confusing point I want you to remember here. We brought an original Fusion composition in. I think I did it by right-clicking up here and selecting, I right-clicked and said, new Fusion composition. Notice the name of this one didn't change because that was just the starting point. We've modified this. This is its own new Fusion composition now. So if I wanted to save this in this project, I just have to left-click and drag it up into my media pool. And if you look in the upper right now, there it is, Animation Technique. We don't even need this one. That was just the starting point. We could get rid of that one. If I chose that original thing and just deleted it, see, watch, nothing changes. It just got rid of that original one. And I still have, Animation Technique right there. And if I deleted this from my project, if I'm in my timeline, select it, hit backspace, it takes it away. Oh my gosh, Daniel, you accidentally deleted your animation technique. You spent so much time working on that Fusion clip. Guess what? It's still right here. It's all right here. So all I have to do is grab it again, bring it down, put it anywhere in my timeline I want. Whoops, and actually make it stick. And there it is. I've got it. I've got it right there. And if I want to use it in future projects, there's an option I've talked about before called power bins. And if you look here, just below your master settings, there's something called power bins, right? Because your main media input is here, right? That's all the stuff you brought in for your project. Down below it here, down below it here, you have the option, let me find this, of adding in power bins, which is, sorry for the scrambling, power bins. What power bins are basically like, think of them like shared folders. Whatever you put here, whenever you open up another new project, these things will be there waiting. It's like, oh, this is something I want to use in all my projects, or I might use, down the line. You can put things in power bins that are like preset folders that DaVinci Resolve remembers every time you open a new project, put them here. Or even if you're going to work on an older project, this stuff will still be there. You put it in here, you can go to an older project, a newer project, and it'll always save these things for you. If you don't see power bins on your DaVinci Resolve, what you want to do, because they've moved them over time, they used to be somewhere else. See right up here, right here, there's a 3-dot ellipsis just above our main media pool. You want to click on that. And when you click on that, you will see there's options right here for show power bins. So make sure you, man, that is the worst scribble ever. You want to make sure you click show power bins. And if you have that selected, then down here, you'll have this whole subsection of power bins, starting with the master. You can expand that. And if you see, you can actually add different folders inside of that. You can add anything you want. You could even say, oh, I know, I'm going to click on the master. I want to add a new bin folder, but I want to call it my text effects, or, or whatever you want to call it, or my text graphics. How's that? So if you make a bunch of text overlays or graphics, you can put that in the folder. So now that I've added that, all I did is right click and I added, made another bin, another folder called my text graphics. I can click on that. I'm now inside of that folder right here. And what I can do is I can grab this again from the timeline and move it up there and put it there. Now it's going to sit there. And even when I'm just in a brand new project, if I ever need it, I can go down to the power bin and click on my text graphics, and it'll always be there that I can use later on. Okay. Now we have just saved that inside of the project and for future projects, but sometimes you might want to share it with a friend or put it in a folder so that maybe if you deleted DaVinci Resolve or accidentally, you want to make sure that if the software, maybe you're upgrading and you don't want to accidentally lose all these things, there's another way you can save these externally into a folder for you to use later on, however you want. Send them to a friend. You could send them out to a friend if you want. Sell them. Make a little money. I made a whole set of graphics, overlays. If you're thinking about finding ways to make some money, build some really cool graphic overlays that are Fusion clips, put them out there, marketplace. Tell people, yeah, I sell those. You can buy those from me. Put them on my website. So what we want to do here is, let's go back into this again. Now look where I am, right? So I'm here on the edit page. Let's select that Fusion clip and let's go back to opening it up in the Fusion page. All right. What you can do is with all of this select, you don't have to select anything, right? What you're looking at here is that exact same composition we've been looking at, right? You can make it neat. However you save this, it'll stay neat. There's a couple things we can do. Like, man, that looks kind of fancy, doesn't it? Maybe you don't want it that fancy. Maybe you're like, oh man, there's a lot of nodes and I don't want to always be staring at that. Watch this trick. You can actually select, draw a box around all of these, right? All of the things that you put together. Can you see they're all selected right now? They're all highlighted. Right click on them and then choose group. You can see, I couldn't see it. You can choose group. And if you group them, it puts them all into one neat little package. Can you see that? Now it's just that simple package. And you can still change the name of the group if you want, because you can right click on it, rename that group. And if you see right here, it gives me the option to change the name from just group to something that I can remember, like animation technique. Now it's saved. You can see as a group as animation technique, and it's got all those pieces right there, nice and simple. And if you ever want to access them again, right click on it and choose expand group. And now it'll show you all the pieces that are in there. Or your option could be right click on it and ungroup, and it'll go back to where it was. Not exactly the same setup because it's moved my media out down. I don't like when it does that. And there they all are, but you can group them to make them nice and super neat. That's a great way to just get things kind of like, I don't want that on. Just make things nice and super neat, super clean, so that it's all in a nice little group there. Now, if you have it here, okay, now you have it so that you're in the Fusion page. You've got everything that you've all done, everything organized the way you want. You got all your nodes put in the right so they're not all over the place. Now what you can do is you can go up to the upper left and click on File, all right? I want you to go to the upper left and click on the word File right there. And when you do that, you're going to see that you can export right from the Fusion page. You've got this one Fusion clip selected. You went into Fusion, right? Let me see. I'm just clicking on stuff here, just to make sure I'm not hiding anything. Went up. All I did was I'm going to click on Export, and you see, right? File, Export, and then right here, Export Fusion Composition. And if I select that as my option, File, Export, Export Fusion Composition, then I can save this in a folder however I want. If I want to call it, AT, Animated Technique. Now I'm going to have that saved on my computer system in a separate file that I could share with a friend, that I could send to one of you guys if you needed something. If I built something for you and you needed it, you want to share with one of your friends, you want to sell them, you want to do whatever, you want to bring it back into your project later on. You want to send it to a different computer that you have DaVinci Resolve activated on and you want to use them over there. You can do that. You can do all of those things and send them along and move them and save them any way you want. Another really cool thing that you can do, I'm going to go back to the edit page. One little last thing I want to show you guys. If you're back over, back over here, let's go to, let me go back to the edit page. Yes, you go there, you go there, you go there. Why are you expanded? Come on, I want to see you. Get out of here, you. I don't want you taskbar. Okay, I'm going to go back over to the edit page. Now, I want to show you one other thing you can do. Now, this is that animated text, all right? You can use some of the options in the upper right to do things. Let me just, before I show you what I'm doing. In the upper right, if you've got that, hold on a second, I just moved over. If I've got the Fusion clip selected, in the upper right, in the inspector, which is right here, you have all these abilities to change the overall size of everything. Anything you do to this Fusion clip now is going to affect the entire clip, which is cool because it's an entire Fusion clip. If you change the location of it, it moves everything. It moves the words, it moves the word animation, it moves the words technique. If you shrink things or make them bigger, it'll affect everything in that clip. All of those things will be affected. So you could actually take that, and if you said, well, I really want that to be a lower third, one way you could do that is to select this here, right? I've got that selected in my timeline. I like a lot of times using the transform window. Have you ever seen this one right down here? If you select that one, it actually puts a border around whatever's selected in your timeline. And then you can actually move it manually and shrink it and do things like, oh, I'm going to turn that into a lower third. I want that to be, let me see. How about here? Kind of in the middle, the A is starting to stretch. Like maybe I wanted that to pop on screen, and maybe it was something that I use the words like, hey, subscribe today or something, whatever. I can change the size. I can make that a lower third. I can move that around. And then when I play, I can put that wherever I want. That thing, while I'm talking, zips in, does its thing, does a hop, and then motion blur zips back out. Pretty simple, huh? I mean, that is Fusion in a nutshell right there. That is Fusion in a nutshell. Being able to create a clip and do a lot of things with it, add a lot of motion, be able to save those clips to use later on, share, put on different computers, create your own file of stuff that'll make your project look unique and make you understand how to use Fusion at a different layer. It's just blocks of information. Guitar, effects pedal, amplifier, layers, left to right, right? Make sure you're putting things in the background and the foreground, layer things up and go build as many pieces of graphic text as you want that make your content look unique and that move the way you want them to move and that make you feel unique and different, right? It's custom, your own custom kind of animation. And while you're doing this, I promise you, every time you see someone else start talking about the Fusion page, you're going to start going, okay, I remember what Daniel told me. Yeah, it's just layer, background, text over that, merged. They merged it in. I see this guy's doing an effect and he's using merge nodes and he's adding in a different node that I don't know yet, but I understand layer and then merge something in. And now you'll only be thinking, well, what's the thing he's adding, he's merging in? I need to learn that new node. And instead of being so confused by Fusion, you'll understand it, you'll get the principles, and now it's a matter of watching how other people are adding in things and getting different things to happen on screen by merging things into different places and adding different effects and masks and things. But you'll understand it, you'll see it, and you'll go, I get it, I get that, I get how nodes work, and I get that it's just beginning, adding in, merging things, and then the output, and then it's going to be back in my timeline when I go back to the edit page. Did that make sense? Was that worth the price of admission, which is absolutely free? If it did, give me a thumbs up. I want to make sure that that was something that was useful to you, that I explained it in a way that you followed along okay, that you were able to kind of see what was going on. I love getting feedback while I'm doing this because it allows me to say, okay, the way I explained it worked, or if it didn't, I need to adjust the way that I explain things, because I want everyone out there who's a noob like me to be able to go, I can do this. I can totally do this. This is not nearly as hard as other people make it out to be because they don't take the time to explain it to me in simple terms that I understand. And that's always my goal here. We got it. Clayton, even Clayton, who's been there the whole time, says, multiple thumbs up. I get it. I can do this, right? Love it. Clayton, great to hear that. Wedding videographer, fantastic. 75 people watching, only 43 thumbs. Come on, people, hit the like button. Don't be afraid to hit the like button. We like the like button. That makes sure that this can get served out to other people too. Lots of thumbs up. I am so excited that that made sense. Like I said, I'm going to be leaving this up for the replay, and I am going to be doing a condensed version of it, an actual video on demand, an edited video, because I can show the screen better, and I can be a little more intentional about, showing where each feature is. So that'll be there later on. But for all you guys right now, you're ahead of the curve. This is going to be something that you can start with. And I want you to get out there, give it a shot, open up the software, watch the playback here, come along, take what you've learned today, but play around with that and see what you can develop, and you can make your own custom animated text overlays and use them in your next project. All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thank you for being involved. Super appreciate it. You guys are the reason I do this. I do this so that I can help every one of you out there who's trying to learn DaVinci Resolve, trying to learn how to make videos, put them onto YouTube and grow a YouTube channel. If I can help, then that's what I'm here for. And thank you, Alfredo, for the $10 super chat. That absolutely makes my day. Not fair to give so much information for free. Man, I appreciate that. It means the world. And thank you for hanging out. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Megan for being there to make sure that this thing goes smoothly. And I'll see you guys all out there on YouTube, and I'll talk to you soon, all right? You guys have a great day. Peace.